Welcome to the Hermetic Astrology Podcast. I'm Gary Caton in Waynesville, North Carolina. You can find me on the web at dreamastrologer.com. And today is Sunday, July 21, and we have Mercury in the heart of the sun. Mercury is in Cancer again, stationed retrograde in Leo. Moved back into Cancer now to make the union with the sun. And this is the first time that Mercury has been retrograde conjunct the sun in Cancer since 2013. And before that, it happened in 2006. It happens about every 6 to 7 years. I can show you the chart for that. Here's the chart for right now. And for those who are at home listening, if you want to see the visuals, just check out the YouTube channel for the podcast and you can find everything there. So here we have Mercury and the sun. I mean, depending on your definition of cazimi, in the Hellenistic times it was 1 degree, so it's certainly well within that. Here you have Sun and Mercury overhead in the 29th degree of Cancer. And this is the second of 3 conjunctions that Mercury makes with the sun in water signs, inferior conjunctions. And this defines what I call the Mercury elemental year of water. Because what happens is when Mercury makes its retrogrades in the water signs or in any particular element, Mercury spends about 50 days more in those 3 signs than it does in any of the other signs. It only spends about 18 days in a sign when it's just plowing along. It spends like 68 days when it goes retrograde because it goes through, back, and then through again, right? So that's quite a difference. That's quite an exaggerated, presence. And so we should pay attention to that. Of course, most people, Mercury retrogrades, problems. Problems with water, Cancer in the home. Well, yeah, I had that recently. I was cleaning up where I have a couple cats and where the cats have their boxes and stuff, and I was like getting underneath there and vacuuming and all this stuff, and I noticed that the carpet was kind of wet when it was near the and I was like, man, there's no way like this, because I put like a liner down there to make sure that there's no leakage or anything, and so I knew it was coming from somewhere else, and it turns out the air conditioner, the condensate was supposed to go outside. It was plugged up inside the unit, and it was leaking out onto the floor and down into the crawl space. So of course I had to call the HVAC I had to call the landlord, who called the HVAC people, who came out and So yeah, it can definitely be redoing things, revisiting things, repairing things, all those words that have to do with that. But I also think that it's worth revisiting, for instance, what was going on in July of 2013 and what was going on in July of 2006. When I did that, it brought up some really interesting things for me. For instance, the other night I gave a talk for the Asheville Friends of Astrology group, and I was sharing with them, hey, remember when this group started? It was back in 2006. And I was talking about, the qualities of water. When you start to break this stuff down and you start to think about water is cool, so it's about going within and checking on your feelings. So going within is a good idea in any retrograde, because basically Mercury is passing between the sun and the earth, so it's interior to the sun earth space. It's in the interior of that space, so going within is a good idea, but especially with water, right? Because the alchemical symbol is a downward pointing triangle. Going within, checking out your feelings, making sure they're yours. Because water is notoriously lacking of boundaries, right? It's like you might be feeling some anxiety, and it's just because you were hanging out with someone who's really stressed out, you know, and that's sort of you sort of absorb some of that energy or something. But also, on the positive side, moistness is about the quality of coming together. And it was back in 2006 that a whole bunch of us astrologers from around the Asheville community got together and formed this group. And we had all kinds of people. David Cochran, the recent Regulus Award winner, he came out back fairly early on, like 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in there. We've had a lot of really good people come out and talk to that group. So that was a really interesting exercise for me to do, is to look back at 2013 and 2008. And by the way, if you want to hear the recording of that talk, you can go to my website and look at the special offers page, and there's 3 options to join as a member. You have just the regular membership where you get premium material every month, and this month the premium thing will be some lecture recordings. Sometimes it's like reports, sometimes it's videos, sometimes it's different stuff. You can also join at the next level and get increased access to me. We're first on the list for consults, and you get a reduced rate, only $1 a minute, which is really great. And then there's the gold level, which you get those 2 things I just said, and you get access to not just the current lecture recordings from, I was at Great Lakes Astrology Conference earlier this year, and I'm sharing those with people, but also you get recordings from having a little bit of technical difficulty here. I'm going to see what's going on. So yeah, with the gold level membership, you can get access to like years and years and years of recordings where I've given this lecture in various cities, and you know, there's like about 10 different folders and subfolders, and like there's gigabytes worth of stuff on there. So yeah, coming back from 2006 and 2013 back to the present moment, and looking at this particular passage of Mercury through Cancer. Mercury made the first passage over the degrees that it's joining with the sun at the maximum elongation as evening star back on June 23rd. And these are all 28, 29 Cancer. They're sort of close to the fixed star Procyon. And so, you know, when it's close to a star, I have that in this category over here. But I wasn't so sure, you know, with the orbs about these things, sometimes they can be a little bit funny. I decided to use fairly tight orbs when I did the tables for the book. If you look at that in terms of what you would have seen in the sky back then, you can see here's the sun below the horizon, here's Mercury with Mars, and you can see here's the conjunction with Procyon, right? There's Procyon. And Procyon was very low, may or may not have actually been able to see Procyon at that time because of the way that the ecliptic is tilted towards the horizon at this time of year. However, and you certainly can't see Procyon right now. It's under the beams of the sun. It will be emerging in August along with Sirius. That's one of the things why they call the dog days of summer, right? In August, Sirius and Procyon come out of the beams of the sun, and these two big, bright, hot dog stars were thought to contribute to the heat of that time of year. But if we go to the the morning star alignment on August 9th, Procyon will be visible at that point in time. And so I think it's worth pointing out, I'm just going to move this forward to August 8th. I think it's worth pointing out that even though I didn't necessarily put Procyon in there this time around, you know, because it's a little bit of a wide orb, this star, I think, is playing a part in what's going on, especially in the upcoming alignment. And because of the conjunction today and the previous evening star alignment, they're all three related. It could be that we're actually feeling the energy of Procyon now, even though it's really only going to be visible in the third conjunction, if you follow me on that. So August 8th. And Procyon is a really interesting star. It's one of the 15 Bohemian magical stars, and it's supposed to grant favor, according to Agrippa, who got it from Hermes. It conferreth the favor of the gods of spirit and men, giveth great power over magic, and preserveth health. So it's a great one to work with in terms of, you know, fortune, magic, and health. I mean, it's a pretty potent star. So I'm just going to show you what that alignment is going to look like. It'll be in the morning sky around August 8th. And really, it'll be for a few days before that. So here you can see, here's the sun still below the horizon. The sun and Venus will be, and here's Mercury. Now, because the morning sky, the ecliptic, is not quite as tilted, it's a little more vertical, you should be able to see not just Procyon, but Sirius. Well, at my latitude, down here in the 30s, if you get up in the 40s, it takes longer for these things to appear. Basically, you add a degree of, or you add a day for every latitude north, and that takes Procyon and Sirius to come out of the beams of the sun. But you can see here that Mercury will be visible before dawn, and there's Procyon, and maybe you'll be able to see Sirius depending on your latitude. But this is a potent connection, because it's interesting when you look at the stones, for instance, that are connected with this star. It's said to be rules over agate. Well, it's interesting because agate is one of the stones that's connected with Mercury. So Mercury and Procyon seem to have a similar energy, and so this might be a particularly good alignment to look forward to as far as working some magic. And it could be that right now, and if you look back to the previous alignment, it could be that those that you've been getting messages about the magic you're supposed to do in August all along, right? So in addition to troubles with your air conditioner and water in the house and blah, 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 you look for the good stuff. Look for the hints about, oh, here's some magic you can do. Here's some stuff that you can work on with your health, and so forth, you see. All right, I'm going to close that out. I try to keep some of this stuff open so I don't have to hunt and find it, but then this particular program, Zoom, gets kind of hungry with the bandwidth. And if you have too many programs open, it gets kind of funky. All right, so that's what's going on with Mercury in the heart of the sun today. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you all about is Jupiter and Saturn are right now coming into what's called a parallel, and they're also coming into an antiscia. And those are two different things, but they can be, they're not necessarily always going to get them together, but in this case you do. So I'm just going to stop this for a second. All right, so here you can see, here's Jupiter at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, right? So it's approximately 15 degrees from 0 Capricorn. And here is Saturn at 16 degrees of Capricorn. So it's also about the same distance from 0 Capricorn. And right now, we just happen to be living at a time where the galactic equator, also known as the Milky Way, is running right through that same place. So Jupiter and Saturn are not just equidistant from 0 Capricorn, which is what we call antiscia, but they're also equidistant from the Milky Way, which they ain't got no name for that, but the galactic equator is pretty powerful juju. You know, that's the galactic center of our galaxy. So, and I was out last night on the Parkway taking a look at that, and oh man, it's just so beautiful. We're also going to be getting together next summer out in Moffett, Colorado, and even though the Milky Way looks pretty sweet from here in the Smokies, it's relatively dark as things go, and I'll show you a little view of what that looked like last night out on the Blue Ridge Parkway. There was it was really beautiful. There was a sort of a thunderhead off in the distance that was kept lighting up, you know, with lightning. The Greeks thought that this meant that Zeus was coming down from Olympus, and it's funny because they love this thunderhead as the thunderhead is lighting up, and then in between them you can see here's the galactic equator, here's the plane of our galaxy, Milky Way, and you can see that Jupiter and Saturn are pretty much right about the same distance on either side there. So so we've got that going on. We've got this antiscia, and it's going to be happening for pretty much all the way up until the end of summer, all the way through the autumn equinox. They're going to be getting slower and stationing, and so both of them, and so that's going to put them in the vicinity of this this relationship with the solstice point and also with the Milky Way. So it's going to put them in this antiscia relationship for a couple months. Now, there's also something going on, and again, they're somewhat related, but they're not exactly the same thing. Antiscia is a longitudinal relationship where they have a midpoint relationship to a solstice or an equinox. What I'm showing you here, if you can see these vertical lines that I've drawn through Jupiter and Saturn, you can see that, and then there's a line right here through it says 270 there, right above the scorpion's tail, and right at the arrow of the archer. That's 0 Capricorn. That's right now, that's galactic center. So they're equidistant from that in terms of longitude. But in terms of their vertical relationship with the equator, the celestial equator, they're also the same distance in that and declination. This is not always the case. When planets are in north or south latitude, that can change their declination. Jupiter and Saturn both happen to be pretty close to the ecliptic right now because they're both approaching their nodes. So it just so happens that they are not only in this antiscia relationship, also with an antiscia to not just zero Capricorn, but with the Milky Way, and also in this parallel of declination. And then, of course, you got to throw in Pluto with the mix, because Pluto happens to be near the ecliptic for only, very rare part of its orbit too. So this is a really potent mixture. And this is something that I think that this is something that there's a couple different ways that we can go with this, because on the one hand, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in the news vis-a-vis, socio-political goings on, right? Because Jupiter and Saturn are social planets. They are, by nature, they activate the socio-political spheres. So there's going to be a lot of that stuff, and that's going to be heating up. Also because zero Capricorn is part of the world axis. But here's the thing. I mean, here's where I get, do I want to let that stuff affect me and consume my time and sort of, my brain bandwidth get eaten up with worrying about what all those people are doing? Or do I want to find ways that I can affect the world, right? I mean, it can go either way. The world can be affecting you, or you can be affecting the world. You see what I'm saying? So it's interesting because when you look at these midpoint things now, the ancients didn't see it as a midpoint thing per se. They didn't have midpoints. But the thing of it is that's what it is. It is a midpoint thing. And the standard text on midpoints is what we call COSI, Combination of Stellar Influences by Reinhold Eberting. So when we look up, this is a must-have in your library as far as I'm concerned. When we look up in COSI, Jupiter, Saturn, he says, patience, achieving success through perseverance. Success, Jupiter, perseverance, Saturn, right? So this suggests that persevering in your own plans and in your own, right? My friend Kelly Lee Phillips used to say that Saturn is about planning your work and working your plan. So planning your work and working your plan and being persistent with that will lead to success when you have Jupiter and Saturn coming together. Some of the other things, when you throw the node in here, he says that it has to do, of course, with either harmonious living together or the desire to terminate associations with others. So the nodes, when you throw the nodes in there, he says it also could have to do with a change of residence or occupation. There's another cat that was part of that school, Alfred Vitta, Rules for Planetary Pictures. I happen to like this one too. When he threw in like the Aries point along with these. Now he says inconstant success, successful separation. So think about it for a second. Successful, Jupiter, separation, Saturn, right? Separated from luck or successful separation. So that's interesting. You might find that that taking a break from all that, hype that you see on the news and everything, separating yourself from that, or for something else that's a distraction that's keeping you from working your plan and planning your work, for instance. I certainly find that I have to turn that stuff off. Okay, with the Aries point, he says separation favored by good fortune, change of place, real estate. I think the change of place in real estate has to do with the Aries axis is considered to be very physical in nature. It's about separation favored by good fortune. So it's like something is being separated, but it's a good thing, it sounds like. So figuring out what you actually need to separate yourself from so that you can plan your work and work your plan will lead to success, I think, is basically the idea that we get with this Jupiter Saturn midpoint picture. All right, well, I guess that's about it for this time. Thanks for tuning in. If you're a regular listener, please consider going to iTunes and leaving a review, or you can leave reviews now on the Facebook page for the podcast. Let me know how I'm doing, what you're enjoying. It's always good to have that human connection. I think that, again, that's water years, like making connections. I think that's what that's good for. Consider checking out becoming a member. We've got a bunch of benefits. We've got an online community there on the on Facebook. We've got a secret Facebook group that goes along with that, and I'm sharing with them, you know, these magical elections that I'm coming up with. I did a few Regulus talismans recently, and I only did 3 of them. I was just going to do one just as an experiment, and then I had a friend who I was thinking about maybe she could use one, and I happened to be going to a July 4th picnic, and this lady was selling crystals, and there was a couple of the crystals that I was thinking of using. I was like, okay, that's too much of a coincidence. So I made a few Regulus talismans, but by the time I gave one to my friend and then my members, they're all gone. So one of the benefits is of being a member is that you get this inside information before it makes it to the public. They can get all scarfed up. So consider becoming a member, and consider leaving a review. Let me know how I'm doing, and that's it for this time. Bright blessings of Jupiter and Saturn and the Milky Way, and also Mercury with Procyon. All right, until next time. Bye for now.